Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well, and you're seeing the signs of spring budding through the earth right now, getting closer to that warmer, very lovely weather that we're all looking forward to. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, for Kate Malinsky, this experience you will soon learn about will remain forever indelibly imprinted on her mind. For it was to be a night of drama, where embroiled in the dusky twilight, like the twinkling silvery stars of the heavens, was a kaleidoscope of sparkling emotions, ranging from the dullness of nervous anxiety, trepidation, uncertainty, to the bright gleaming star of excitement, along with the two most powerful stars of all, wonder and astonishment. These varied flavours of emotion were to become the quintessential ingredients that night, serendipitously blended and thrown together to create a marvellously distinguished, imperishable red-letter evening that Kate Malinsky would never ever forget as long as she lived. To date, all these years later, Kate might take a pause for a moment, draw in a deep breath of soulful reflection, ask herself, did that really happen? Yet she will be the first to unequivocally assure you that it most certainly did. When the curtains roll back on the stage of her life, you too will also be forced to draw in a breath of wonderment, for you will be equally as enchanted by her story, that will lead you to believe that there are definitely angels among us. Who would have ever thought that such a normal, routine, regular night in Banff would roll forward so presumptuously, with a drama of the humankind, engaging actors, a stage, an audience, finished by a bountiful appreciative applause from the satisfactorily entertained? Yet for Kate and her brother, that night had not ended, not by a long shot. A drama of their own making was on the precipice of being birthed, which invited two outlandish, unassuming characters on board the stage of their lives that they would never have envisaged or anticipated in their wildest dreams or imaginings. So on with our noteworthy story, before you can bear the suspense no longer. Kate had solicitously prepared the selected occasion on behalf of the Family Bereavement Society, for people who were suffering from the fortuitous, unforeseen death of a beloved one, taken from them far too soon. It was to raise money for those struggling to pick up the pieces of their lives again, after such a dreadful event that had torn their lives so viciously apart, like the paper in a paper shredder. These unfortunate people required help during those blistering, austere months after a devastating tragedy, where financial and emotional help was so often required, as well as lengthy, intensive counselling sessions encouraged with a skilled therapist, to bring about solace and acceptance to the broken of heart. The theatrical production was being hosted in Banff Avenue, on the corner of Banff and Wolf Street, in the pretty beguiling town of Banff, located amidst the prepossessing striking views of Alberta's Rocky Mountains that rise up into the sky in their swanky imperial majesty and deportment. Proud and tall, they saunter up pompously into the heavens, arresting the views of this charming, prepossessing small town, cradling it with their mighty, sculptural, powerful hands that will quite literally take your breath away, as they will surely beguile you with their transfixing allure. For even blind people who have visited our town claim to have felt its magnetic pulling beauty, while the hard of hearing believe that the music of this place has quite literally filtered through their ears. Let's just say this town's rustic traditions and historic heritage are heightened and enhanced by the endorsement of wholesome, natural building materials, predominantly the use of stone and wood, reflected in the architecture and typically seen all over the town. It is reminiscent of a town you might see in the Swiss Alps, or on a box of Swiss chocolates, as pretty as a picture. Banff is one of the most beautiful towns on the entire planet, without question. A dreamy, romantic place like a beautiful poem that rolls off your tongue so eloquently, or an undulating tuneful melody that pulls at your heartstrings like the strings of a church bell, tumbling through town with a seamless musical flow, reminiscent of the pretty flowers that cascade over the large flower barrels in town, that plough even more jewelled beauty into this place, if that were at all possible. Truly, it doesn't get better than this. Let's just say this twinkling town, with its eclectic shops, boutiques, fabulous eateries, and avant-garde coffee shops, bobs up against the resplendent mountains like a gleaming diamond. These magical mountains have witnessed so much over the centuries, too much to comprehend. They carry in their sturdy, powerful proportions, unyielding foundations, and deep depths, clandestine secrets from generations long past. They wear the history of this place like a mother-of-pearl overcoat that sweeps over rugged contours, voluptuous sturdy bedrock that towers into the heavens with a magisterial grace and glitters under the cobalt blue sky. The town is situated about 112 miles west of Calgary and is magnanimously flanked by the awe-inspiring mountains of Mount Rundle, Sulphur Mountain, Mount Norquay, and Cascade Mountain. When it came to the play being hosted that auspicious night, locals and visitors alike to Banff were naturally welcomed and invited to see the production that was being held at St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, built from stone, established in 1887 by Scottish railway workers who were desirous to worship in a Presbyterian church, and hence St. Paul's Presbyterian Church came into being, a proud prominent landmark among many others here in Banff, illustriously gilded with the influences of a rich, vibrant history behind it. Kate Malinsky was not only producing, but playing a quintessential leading part, complemented by other teenagers from Banff Community High School. It would seem all in town had been informed about the precociously talented teenagers who were performing a surprise modern interpretation of Agatha Christie's acclaimed production for $8 a ticket, to be presented on several nights during the next month, as the audiences could not be too large. There were posters strewn about town, alerting people's attention to this must-see play. It had been Kate's ingenious idea to produce and star in this play, as her best friend Doris Macy had sadly lost her sister in a hit-and-run accident over a year prior, and Kate was desperate to contribute towards the bereavement fund to help similar grieving families in the future overcome the tortured unfairness of their grief that had swept into their lives like an unwelcome, unexpected tornado. On that fateful early evening of the inauspicious calamitous day in question, that brought about Kate's incessant, earnest need to help the bereavement fund, let's just say a seemingly benign morning, morphed into a cruel, uncongenial evening, when a family's life was so savagely ruined by a headstrong 16-year-old German teenager from Attenberg, Saxony. The willful young teenager had been visiting the town of Banff with his parents to enjoy the privileges of what this part of the world offers so generously to their guests from all parts of the world, who come here to enjoy the turquoise lakes, the majestic mountains, the vibrant wildlife, the fantastic hiking opportunities, and so much more, of course. It would seem that the unruly, refractory teenager was hankering after a bit of fun. He surreptitiously pinched his parents' rental car. Unbeknown to them, he had driven like a bat out of hell through town, with no regard for the local townfolk that were hanging around the place in the early evening, many having visited local restaurants for a bite to eat. What possessed the young teenager to drive like a demented maniac and perform such outrageous stunts is anyone's guess. Yet it was later established he was an all-time fan of the 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher, who is one of the world's fastest drivers. Ostensibly, the teenager had idolized Michael Schumacher's success. He hung posters on the wall of his bedroom of his hero that smiled down on him every waking moment when he went to bed and rose up early in the morning. Let's just say, with so much in-your-face reminders of Michael Schumacher on his walls every day, the teenager possibly thought of little else than following in his idol's footsteps. Perhaps he saw himself one day, driving like the speed of light. Well, almost. Many who witnessed the deadly scene that dreadful evening wore agog expressions on their faces, as if someone had just flung a bucket of ice-cold water over their heads. It was so surreal. No one could believe that this was actually happening. Indeed, the events moved by so fast, like a ball of wool on your grandmother's lap, falling, unrolling, gliding across the floor, in one long stringy trail. It can't be stopped in time. There's no backtracking, no undoing this event. It has to be played out, like that wool. Only time cannot be rolled back on this particular occasion. As we all know, it doesn't work like that. The car angrily lunged through the town at an outrageous, preposterous, unforgiving speed, making a high-pitched squeaking and jerking sound, screaming under the extreme painful exertion and pressure of driving at its maximum speed and capacity. As it neared its vicious, thunderous, malicious, predatory approach, people spontaneously cradled their hands over mouths, as a scene from their worst nightmares unfolded before their very eyes. It turned out that the German teenager, Barrett Schneider, had been inebriated after stealing a large bottle of his father's vodka. He had been inspired surreptitiously to take a joyride while his parents were snoozing, fancying himself as becoming like his idol. It was at the precise inopportune moment Doris's sister had stepped out onto the pavement to cross the road, and had no time to retreat back on her footsteps, as the rude, obnoxious rental car rocketed across the road at a speed that was hard to fathom. The car rumbled, shrieked, screamed and moaned. Its rubber tyres knocked over the young girl, slashing and gliding over her torso. She was killed instantly, lay squashed in the road like a dead animal. One bystander had reported the drunken teenager, who was later arrested, climbing out of his truck speedily. On seeing the graphic, gruesome scene of carnage upon the road, he began to laugh and laugh, his laughter almost morphing into a witch's cackle. His body almost doubling over from amusement, as if the whole event was also terribly funny. The townsfolk were soon to learn that in traumatic situations, some people offensively laugh in response to such a dreadful calamity. It's the natural way for them of diffusing the horror of witnessing such a macabre scene. It had been anything but funny. But let's just say people always react to trauma differently, so we can't judge them for that. Kate had observed firsthand an entire family torn apart by the devastating, shattering news of a daughter or sister's fortuitous demise. Kate and Doris had been best friends, so she was closely acquainted with the Maisleys, who were like family to her. Doris's father, Peter Maisley, sunk into such a deep despair. He couldn't return to work for quite some time, as it was all he could do to even get out of bed in the morning. He had lost his will to live. Losing his beloved daughter very nearly sucked the life out of his soul. It would seem his life had become a wavering struggle of just getting through the next 24 hours, one step at a time, while his wife Philippa had completely crumbled like a dilapidated ancient wall on very shaky foundations that begins to fold over, as if groaning in a hopelessness that seems to invite falling apart. For Philippa, sandwiching her life stoically together, had become pointlessly hard, almost futile. Doris had battled with her parents' grief, and of course the loss of her sister, which burdened her own melancholia, all the more, so that she wore the weight on her shoulders, which was not easy for a 16-year-old girl to endure. Kate and her family had stepped in to buy groceries for the family, to cook meals, and organise for a counsellor to attend to the family's emotional needs. It would seem that Kate's family's kindness paid off in leaps and bounds. An entire year later, the family was now thriving, like a perennial flower that against all the odds had pushed itself through the adversity, through the hard, stony, unforgiving ground, to embrace another season. The Maisley family had triumphantly weathered the storm of their own grief, flourishing in the best way they possibly could. Of course, their lives would never be the same again, but they could move forward and make the best of each day, as despite the desolation they felt, they knew that life was a rich tapestry that should be lived and enjoyed, every moment appreciated. It was after this tragic event that Kate had taken it upon herself to present Agatha Christie's favourite 1953 long-revered play. Witness for the prosecution, Kate had chosen to play the part of Romaine Vole, the wife of the accused. Kate's account. Let's just say I was excited about performing tonight. I loved acting, but I was filled with butterflies flapping around my belly, so that every part of me was wobbling with anticipation and nervous energy. I told myself firmly to keep it together. I knew that if I began to tremble in front of the other actors that I'd recruited for this play from my school, it would only influence them negatively. I had to lead by my example, but it was difficult to maintain a steady calm. Even my teeth were chattering as doubtful reservations began to creep into my head, like, what if you forget your words? What if you break out in a nervous sweat? What if you just can't perform? Let's just say that the most terrifying thought of all for me was getting stage fright. The makeup artist was layering my fair skin with makeup, stroking her badger's hair powder brush across my face. The gentle stroking brush movements calmed my agitation. She grinned at me brightly, showing off a pair of perfect white teeth. I'm so glad to be helping tonight. It's a real honour for me to play my part. But of course you're the real hero, organising this play to help the bereavement fund. It's such a fabulous idea. Are you nervous? A little, I say, doing my level best to look as nonchalant and apathetic as possible. But the reality is that within me, my insides are swarming like a hive of frenzied bees. In the beginning, doing this play had seemed like such a great idea. At first, that is. But in the cold light of day, I'm beginning to seriously harness a great deal of doubt. Was this a crazy idea or what? What if I just cannot pull this off? A reprimanding, stern voice within my gut reminds me that this play has been produced for a very good reason. And if it was all to go horribly wrong, tonight, let's just say, and there was egg left all over my face from my failure, who could possibly begrudge the money spent on this play being donated to such a worthy cause? The makeup artist attends to the other actors' faces, sweeping the large brushes of makeup over the contours of their skin with a professional proficiency. The dramatic effects of her fastidious work mean that our faces on stage will not look washed out or pale. My co-actors are looking up at me for some soothing, reassuring words to nurture and calm their doubts, as they are apprehensive of what the night might actually hold for them, and clearly entertaining in their minds similar uncertainties to my own. The difference is I cannot show mine to them. I have to pretend I'm as cool as a cucumber, which I certainly am not. It's all going to be absolutely fine, I assure them. Take in a deep breath now. I'm now acting in front of my friends, in order for my mock confidence to give them the strength they're craving. But they have little comprehension of the mushed-up state of my own insides. I'm quite literally squirming like an octopus at the end of a fisherman's spear. And right now, if I had the choice, I'd run far away from the stage and get the hell out of this church. I would if I could, but it's too late, so I'm resigned to my plight, whether I like it or not. I have to do this to the very best of my ability. In a trice, my heart is pounding, every muscle in my jaw clenching. My chest feels so tight, it steals my breath. I'm telling myself in no uncertain terms to get a grip, to hold it together. I remind myself that some people perform in front of audiences all over the world, of millions of people in music stadiums, like Celine Dion or Adele. If they can do it, so can I. I can hear my father's deep voice outside the drawn velvety navy curtains of the stage, addressing the audience as the time moves shockingly closer for my grand entrance. My whole body withers like a thirsty wildflower. I feel deflated. First, I would like to thank St. Paul's Presbyterian Church for allowing us to do our play here this evening, for what I believe is a very worthwhile cause, as those suffering a fortuitous bereavement are always in need of help financially and emotionally in grievous times such as this. The Bereavement Fund would appreciate your invaluable help,
And if any of you feel tonight like dipping into your pockets ever deeper with more charitable donations, we would be very obliged. If you are not from Banff and are visiting and as an outsider, we would like to graciously welcome you to our very special town. Your contributions to our worthy cause will be very much appreciated. I am very proud of my daughter Kate, who is passionate about this enterprise. It was indeed her decision to modernize an Agatha Christie play for tonight's performance, to honor the precious memory of a young lady, 14-year-old Tasha Maisley, who was mown down by a car in our town a year ago by a German teenager taking a joyride in his parents' rental car. A dreadful accident by all accounts. So without further ado, let us start the ball rolling.
The whole audience collapses into cheers and claps. Before I know it, the velvety blue curtain rolls back. I make my way cautiously onto the stage, my feet sliding across the cold wooden deck of the platform in the smart black court shoes I'm wearing, as if an unseen force is propelling me ever forwards. My heart is galloping in my chest, like wild horses gallivanting across an open prairie. I glance out at the intimidating sea of faces in the audience, where every unflinching eye is pinned directly on me. I feel as conspicuous as an ant, being viewed under a microscope. It's an uncomfortable feeling. I'm wearing a no-nonsense black pencil skirt, a white blouse and jacket, with my black hair swept back in a sleek top, with a scarf tied behind the hilly roll in a headband, while cascading curls tumble down one side of my face. I'm wearing perfectly accentuated red lips, with pronounced black eyeliner, highlighting my grey-blue eyes, so typical of the 50s era. The sound of silence is electric. Not a soul in the audience makes a noise. There is no rustling of paper, or even a cough which might actually be rather welcome at this moment, as just stealing the attention away from me for just a second would be nice. I wish someone would cough to cause a wee bit of distraction. It might ease the tension a wee bit. I observe my mother sitting in the front row of chairs, her hand clasped in an anxious prayer-like position, as she waits in bated trepidation for my very first words to bounce off from the stage across to the audience like a rubber ball. My father is sitting there, his two hands placed firmly on either side of him, pressing down on the firm foundation of the upholstered padding, his upper shoulders and chest eagerly bent forward in urgent anticipation. I can see his nose is twitching, his eyes fixed stoically on me. They reflect an empathetic understanding of my uneasiness, but at the same time, a resolute faith in me. My 24-year-old brother is grinning at me from ear to ear, so brightly, like the sunshine on a rainy day. He has his right hand pinned up in a thumbs-up position, as if to say to me, "You go, girl. I believe in you. I know you can do it." I'm encouraged by their extreme faith in me. The first words that come out of my mouth flow as smoothly as a sea breeze, and with the animated faces in the audience turning up into delighted grins, my fear rides away like an ocean ferry on the Atlantic, while confidence swoops down on me like a majestic eagle from the heavens, carrying me up in talons, infusing me with an assertive courage that helps encourage the other actors to follow in my example. "Yes," I say to the audience, "Leonard Vole is my husband. I'm his wife. He's been accused of the murder of a very wealthy old lady. I'm going to step in as a witness for the defence. I'm going to discredit my husband. I'm going to undermine his integrity, but for a very, very good reason. I fully intend to fabricate such audaciously bizarre evidence to use against him in order to undermine my own account, my own credibility. Do you see where I'm going with this? I'm going to skillfully lay down ludicrously preposterous allegations that are so outrageous
that no sane-thinking adult would believe a word of it. People will believe that I'm vindictively conspiring against my husband to hasten his conviction, that I have an axe to grind with him, that I want him brutally punished. This cunning way, ladies and gentlemen, I shall successfully improve my husband's chances of acquittal. There are many that will despise my surreptitious misleading claims against him. They will leap to his defence, for they will see him as unfairly wronged, falsely accused. They will be drawn to favouring him in every single regard. But no one will know. I planned this all along, so that my husband will be rescued from these accusations that are laid against him. Every husband needs a wife like me, that can deliver him so sagaciously from all his troubles. The audience claps and cheers. The play bobs along steadily, like a boat sailing along a smooth expanse of ocean, without a choppy wave in sight. By all accounts, it's a phenomenal success, with people cheering and complimenting us on a remarkable performance that I even know was incredibly good. "My darling, you were marvellous," says my mother, giving me a huge encouraging hug, followed by my father, who throws me up in his arms like an orca whale flipping up a seal in the air. He's beaming with pride from ear to ear, as if he can't believe a daughter of his performed like a star tonight, and he's pinching himself in his revelry. "You're a natural actress," Katie pipes. "I knew you could do it. I knew you could. Some of those stars in Hollywood would do well to learn from your example. I felt every one of your emotions. I even had goosebumps on my flesh," he says, rubbing his hands across his arms to demonstrate this fact. "Everyone I've spoken to says you're the kind of true talent that rarely ought to be gracing the red carpets of Hollywood." After the performance and all the adrenaline being pumped into my bloodstream, let's just say I'm not ready to settle down, not yet, to return home to a good night's sleep. I mean, come on! How can I, after such a fabulously sizzling night that has spiked my adrenaline, which is now currently shooting up to the stars? I'm grinning from ear to ear, and am feeling enervated like an excitable kid that has been on the roller coaster and wants to ride it all over again, or at the very least relive the experience by sharing it with someone else. And my brother's company will do very nicely for the job. He's always a willing listener, and by the look on his face now, he's as proud as Punch and would quite literally do almost anything for me. As I was saying, my 24-year-old brother Baron has always been a fabulous listener, a thoughtful, generous type. He brought me some champagne and snacks, and I'm starving. I haven't eaten a thing all day. As like a bride on her wedding, nervous energy keeps the hunger pangs at bay. But now my hunger has come rolling in like the high tide. "I thought we could go for a drive tonight," he says. "We could go somewhere off the beaten track, sit under the stars, celebrate together with champagne and snacks. I'm driving, so I'll be drinking the fizzy grape juice. But you, sis, you can have all the champagne. I'm proud of you," he says, giving me a huge hug. "Your performance tonight was electric." "You're taking Kate for a drive, are you?" says my father. "To celebrate under the stars? What a marvellous, marvellous idea. How thoughtful of you, Baron. And so typical of you. Me and your mother would love to be joining you both, but we're exhausted, worn out from the wearing anticipation we felt all day. I think the moment our heads hit the pillow, we will fall fast asleep. But you kids, with all your energy, you go and celebrate, for you've got young blood, and the night is still young. And quite frankly, I don't care if your sister is only 16. She definitely deserves some champagne for that bedazzling performance." "Where are you going to take me?" I asked my brother. "Not sure. I thought we could drive around the countryside, find a nice remote spot under the stars to have a midnight picnic together. I've brought along some battery-operated lights and torches, along with your windbreaker, in case you need it. It could be quite choppy out there."
"Thanks, Baron. You think of everything. You're the best brother ever. The last thing I want to do is go to sleep. I want to bask in the thrill and afterglow of the entire evening. It feels good to be up on that stage, but coming down to earth after a huge high is not easy. I feel on top of the world right now. The play was such a dazzling success, far more than I ever envisaged."
"Well, you were a natural, sis. Dad was right. Your talent could outrival many of Hollywood's elite. You should be very proud of yourself."
"Thanks, Baron. It's kind of you to say, but I believe you're exceedingly biased, but I love you for it anyway."
"I may be prejudiced, I admit, as far as you're concerned, but never was a truer word ever spoken from the heart. I mean it, sis. You're a star."
I had changed into my tracksuit after the performance and was wearing a pair of sneakers, so I was kitted out to enjoy some champagne under the stars, and excited about talking to my brother about everything that had transpired that evening, and to get his opinion on the performances and his impression of it. Baron had put on some classical music, while his truck cautiously rolled down some rather precarious ancient roads that were far off the beaten track, that even in the cold light of day would almost certainly have subdued the venturesome types who would wisely give those roads a miss. But not for me or my brother. Let's just say there was a brazen, valiant, almost impertinent confidence that infected the both of us, with a cocky boldness that in normal circumstances we would never normally have indulged. But not tonight. Everything tonight was different. It was like we could conquer the entire world, rise above it all. For once in our young lives, we could abandon the reticent, unambitious side of ourselves. To hell with being cautious. I observed the tenebrous scenery through the window of the car. Trees, so many of them, eagerly penciling up into the twilight curtain of sky. The jack pine trees, the balsam firs, the Manitoba maples on the embankments on either side of the road, clustered together in sprawling groups, seemingly celebratory, as they jiggle and tossle their boughs, almost as if clapping their hands at me, while a soft wind seems to whisk and churn through the valley. Suffice to say, the pragmatic side of ourselves has definitely abandoned us. We feel as if we could overcome anything tonight. If there was any time that I could have jumped out of a plane with a parachute without throwing a tantrum, it would be now. I was up for an adventure in the middle of the night. So was my brother. There was no time like the present. I felt reasonably confident that my brother's Toyota Land Cruiser could overcome any challenges or obstacles along our path. It was a powerful, robust vehicle, capable of coping with less agreeable terrain. Once we'd left town, we noticed that the only light around us was from the headlights of the car. But the bright night was clustered with a fabulous showing of twinkling stars this evening, while a silvery moon conquered the darkness with her ethereal luminescence. The trees are like vertical cardboard cutouts in dense, sturdy shapes. They consume the darkness, becoming one with it. In a trice, my brother's truck is wobbling and shaking unsteadily as it tackles a gross impediment in our path that is heavily littered with sculptural rocks and jagged appendages that jut out like sharp knives that could pierce your tires with effortless ease. Even the rocks themselves could so easily toss your car over the edge of the mountainous elevation if you should slip or swerve in the wrong direction with just one bump. In my humble opinion, not even a four-wheel drive can overcome this toilsome road, that I doubt was ever a road in the first place. I astutely pointed this out to my brother earlier on. I told him it didn't look like a road, but he didn't listen. Of course not. He thought he knew better, as is always the case with my brother. We had come out tonight to have fun, even travel down roads we had avoided in the past, but I hadn't expected this. I hadn't anticipated my brother's doggedly determined nature to venture down a path like this. His truck is a hair's breadth away from the sheer, craggy outcrop. One wrong move and our car could roll over to the bottom of the valley. Let's just say we would be unlikely to survive this, if that should happen.
"Bloody hell," says my brother. "I don't think this is a road at all. You must have been right all along. How could I have got it so horribly wrong? I'm going to have to back out of here, or we'll be in a terrible pickle. This place is treacherous. The problem is, how am I going to do it? It looked like a road, but it's a bulky, rugged terrain. That's what it is. At one time it might have been a road, but not anymore. It's not suitable for even a car like mine. If we're not careful, it could mean we go rolling down all those jagged rocks to the valley below. That thought is not a good one.
Suddenly I feel defeated, like a punctured beach ball, as the joy has been expunged from me. My mood is rapidly deflating. It's going down and down and down. I feel as flat and subdued as a plain piece of white paper. My former cocky confidence has now deserted me, as if I've sobered up from sunbathing in the intoxicating afterglow of my success. My former effervescent champagne-like sparkle has all but sizzled away. I observe my brother's tense, strained demeanour. His jawline is clenched tightly. His back is stiff and straight. His hands grasp the steering wheel, holding on to it for dear life. I know he's worried about getting his car out of here. I hold my breath. My fists compress together tightly in my lap. My throat becomes scratchy. I can barely say a word, but I manage a squeak. I think we should leave your truck here. Walk away from here. I don't know if you can manoeuvre your truck safely out of here. One move in the wrong direction. We're in trouble. We could land at the bottom of the cliff over there.
I've got this, sis, says my brother, with a mock confidence. Just you wait and see. I'll back out of here very carefully, move away from the sheer face of the cliff, back onto the proper road. I believe we can do it. I have faith. His stumbling words betray his lack of conviction. Then it happens, as my brother manoeuvres the car backwards. My worst nightmare tumbles inauspiciously into our lives, like an unwelcome dinner guest. In that second, I know we're going to die. It is like everything happens in slow motion. Our truck wheels back over some loose rocks. It loses its traction. They try to grip on the unsteady, scarred ground beneath, which offers them no support whatsoever. The truck is thrown violently forwards, losing its balance, spinning, reeling, and toppling precariously and dangerously over the overhang. It's plunging, plummeting, descending down the bluff to the valley below. I was expecting the truck to continue its rolling descent, nose-diving, walloping down the menacing craggy outcrops, but it suddenly stops, as if by magic. Right now its steel aluminium carcass should be beaten to a pulp as it plummets down the revengeful high incline of the rugged barranco. For a moment, all is very still, as if I'm snatched up in a nightmare from which I will surely awaken, because that's what this is. It's just a nightmare. But the silence is conspicuous. All of a sudden, the rear of my brother's truck is lifted up and dragged away from the sheer precipice of the cliff face, as if the car is a wheelbarrow being yanked powerfully backwards. We can hear the truck scraping across the rocks, as if heavy arms are pulling it away from the treachery of the abyss. My brother's truck is soon lifted above the rocky outcrops so that it is elevated above the ground. Me and my brother are now suspended in the front seats of the truck, as if we're being wheeled away in a pram, like two babies. It's so dark, apart from the shimmering shafts of pearly moonlight, that we can barely see a thing. We hear two voices chatting away happily to each other in a foreign language. The voices are audibly clear, incorporating clicks. The conversation is engaged, spirited, animated even, as if the people talking are highly intelligent. But who are they? I am befuddled, confused. The beings are almost carrying us in the air, as if it's no big deal for them, something they do every day of their lives, without batting an eyelid. "What the hell?" whispers my brother to me, his face an expression of complete bewilderment. He reaches for his torch in the dashboard, flashes it towards the window, to see if he can see anything outside, but it's so glaring, we can't see a thing. Something or someone extricated us from almost certain death, but who?
Or what? In that second, I know we've been rescued by angels. No one else, and nothing else on this earth, could have helped deliver us like this. It's God's angels, I whispered to my brother. They redeemed us from certain death. A grateful tear spills down my face. It trickles down my cheeks, drops over the precipice of my chin to my chest, without being wiped away by my thumbs. I'm touched to the quick, honoured that God would send his angels to liberate us. I know how many people are killed in accidents every year. It feels like we've been plucked away from disaster, which makes me feel incredibly privileged to be so favoured. My brother's truck is being lowered into a road that is easy to navigate. The road we were trying to get back onto in the first place, but we've been delivered to it safely. Me and my brother quickly tumble out of the car as fast as we can with an eager haste, leaving the car doors wide open. We're hoping to see the angels that relieved us from almost certain death. We see two large silhouettes walking away from the scene. The figures have to be angels. They're mighty, majestic, lofty, tall, easily 10 foot, weighing 1,000 pounds. Something's not right, though. Angels are not covered in hair. But these idiosyncratic, mysterious beings, whatever in God's name they are, do appear to be covered in long, flowing dark hair that is swaying in the wind. "Excuse me," I say, running up to the angelic being. Both silhouettes stop walking. Two heads turn around to look directly at me, while my brother's torch caresses their faces so that we can see them both clearly. I'm staring at two Herculean Bigfoot. I never knew creatures like this existed in North America, although I dare say I have heard the indigenous people talk about such beings before, that are often referred to as the guardians of the forest, but I never fully appreciated how outer-worldly they are. Both the Bigfoots are staring at me with bright yellow eyes, which I realise is caused from an eyeshine, but in my mind they are every bit as angelic as the stereotype white beings with wings we are told are angels. All I can say is that these two beautiful creatures were surrounded by a palpable loving energy. I knew I was in the presence of an extraordinary, godly, unconditional love that knows no boundaries, no prejudices, no restrictions, no bias, no limitations in its favour. It was a love the likes of such I have never experienced before or since. So to me these two Bigfoot were unequivocally angels in every single regard. I dash up to one of the Bigfoots as if greeting a long-lost old friend that I haven't seen for an age. I throw my arms around him, surprising myself by the solid, sturdy, robust substance of his physical being. I'm sobbing with relief in his chest, my tears wetting his long hair. I realise in his arms I'm like a fragile doll. I didn't feel an ounce of fear, not for a moment, not when you're surrounded by such a resplendent love. Feelings of fear are never engaged, or even contemplated for that matter. The Bigfoot held me close to him. He presses my body tightly to his chest. I can feel the rise and fall of his breath, the rich fragrance of moss and earth upon his being, a pleasant, very pleasing smell. He's patting my back and saying something I don't understand. Omolona, Fanalina, Omodosso. Thank you, I say. You saved our lives. We nearly died. You rescued us. The large Bigfoots look at the both of us. We hear words in our heads. You are meant to be saved. Go in peace. We watch the Bigfoots gliding away. They nod at us and pursue their conversation as we hear them talking backwards and forwards to each other until their voices finally are gone, as are they. Me and my brother drive back home until my brother stops the car and sighs. Did that really happen? I nod and say, it sure did. My brother shakes his head and says, tonight we were delivered by Bigfoot angels. All these years later, when I reflect on this event, I have goosebumps. Sometimes I say to myself, oh, that didn't happen. But I assure you, it did. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.